The CEO waited alone every Christmas, until a single mom and her daughter knocked on his door. They said no one ever saw light in the grand Westbridge mansion during Christmas. The man who lived there, Ethan Westbridge, was a billionaire CEO who had everything except love. Every December, the city glittered with warmth and laughter, but behind his tall glass windows, Ethan sat alone, year after year, with nothing but silence and the ghost of a past he could never forget. Until one snowy Christmas Eve, a single mother and her little girl knocked on his door and changed his life forever. They said no one ever saw light in the Westbridge mansion during Christmas. The grand house, standing on the edge of the city, looked more like a frozen memory than a home. Tall windows, silent halls, and gates that never opened. Inside lived Ethan Westbridge, a man who had everything money could buy, a billion-dollar company, respect, power, but nothing that truly mattered. He sat alone in his study that night, staring at the orange glow of the fireplace. Outside, snow fell endlessly, wrapping the world in white silence. The only sound was the crackle of firewood and the faint ticking of the old clock above the mantelpiece. On the desk beside him lay a half-eaten dinner, a glass of untouched red wine, and a single-framed photograph, a woman with soft brown hair, smiling as if she still lived somewhere in the corners of his heart. Every year, Ethan promised himself he would move on. And every year, when December came, he found himself sinking into the same stillness, the same ache, the same empty house that seemed to whisper her name. He reached for his phone. "Clara," he said when his assistant answered. "Sir, I was just about to call you. The meeting for tomorrow—" "Cancel it." "Cancel? But sir, it's—" "Christmas Day. Go home, Clara. Be with your family." There was a pause on the other end. Then a gentle voice. "And you, sir? Do you have anyone to be with?" Ethan stared into the fire. "I have everything I need." He ended the call before she could respond. The room fell silent again. He leaned back in his chair and glanced out the tall window. The city below glowed with light, families gathering, children laughing, carolers singing. He could almost hear them through the snow. But here in this mansion, Christmas had been buried years ago. He thought of her, Clara, his wife. It had been 5 years since the accident. She had loved Christmas more than anyone. Every December, she'd fill the house with lights, bake cookies, play old songs, and drag him away from his meetings just to hang ornaments. Now the same tree stood in the corner of the room, untouched, unlit, collecting dust. He rubbed his face, trying to chase away the memories. "Enough," he whispered to himself. But the ache didn't go away. He poured himself another glass of wine, but didn't drink it. He just sat there, staring into the fire as if the flames could burn away the loneliness. Then, a sound broke the silence. Knock, knock. He froze. No one ever came here, not at this hour, not on Christmas Eve. He waited. Maybe it was just the wind. But then, knock, knock, knock. Louder this time. Frowning, Ethan stood, buttoning his sweater, and walked toward the front door. The sound of the storm grew louder as he approached. The hallway lights reflected off the marble floor, stretching his shadow like a ghost behind him. When he opened the door, a blast of cold air hit his face. Snow swirled in from the darkness, and there, standing on his porch, were two figures. A woman, maybe in her early 30s, with hair plastered to her face from the snow, holding a little girl in a worn pink coat. The child clutched a stuffed bear, shivering from head to toe. Ethan blinked in disbelief. "What on earth?" The woman's voice trembled. "I'm sorry. Our car broke down about a mile back. We've been walking for hours. The storm got worse and your house was the only one with lights on. Please, can we just wait inside until it slows down?" Her words came out between shaking breaths. The little girl's cheeks were red from the cold. Ethan hesitated. His instinct was to say no, to keep his distance like he always did. He didn't let people in. Not anymore. But then the little girl looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes and whispered softly, "Mister, it's really cold." Something inside Ethan cracked open, the part of him that had been asleep for too long. He stepped aside and said quietly, "Come in." They entered hesitantly, stamping the snow off their boots. Warmth from the fireplace reached them, and the little girl sighed in relief. Ethan closed the door and turned to face them properly. The woman smiled weakly, brushing the snow from her coat. "Thank you. I know this is strange, but we didn't know where else to go. The roads are blocked, and the nearest inn is miles away." Ethan nodded, still studying her. Her face looked tired, her hands red from the cold, but her eyes, soft hazel, full of gratitude, met his with quiet strength. He said nothing for a moment, then gestured toward the living room. "The fire's still warm. Sit down. I'll get you some towels." The little girl held her mother's hand tightly as they followed him in. When they reached the fire, the girl stopped suddenly, her eyes lighting up. "Wow! Mommy, it's so big! Like a castle!" Ethan almost smiled. "Almost. It's just a house," he murmured. The girl tilted her head innocently. "Then why does it look so lonely?" The question hit him harder than it should have. He blanked, unsure how to answer. The woman gently tugged her daughter's hand. "Lily, hush." But Ethan raised a hand. "It's all right." He looked down at the little girl and said softly, "It's been lonely for a very long time." The child gave a small nod, as if she understood more than she should, then crouched near the fireplace, warming her tiny hands. Ethan watched them for a long moment. Something about the sight, a mother and her daughter huddled by his fire on Christmas Eve, filled the room with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He turned quietly toward the kitchen. "I'll make you both some tea." As he walked away, he caught himself thinking, for the first time in years, that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas wouldn't be like the others. The mansion was silent except for the sound of the storm outside and the soft crackling of the fire. Ethan returned a few minutes later with a tray, 2 mugs of hot tea, and a small plate of cookies he'd found in the kitchen. He hadn't baked them, his housekeeper left them earlier that week, but they suddenly seemed important now. The woman smiled when she saw them. "You didn't have to go through the trouble," she said softly. Ethan shook his head. "You're freezing. Drink this." She accepted the cup with both hands, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. "Thank you," she murmured. The little girl took her cup too, blowing on it before taking a tiny sip. It's sweet," she said, her voice full of delight. Ethan couldn't help it. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I suppose it is." The woman looked at him again, more closely this time. He looked about 38, maybe 40, dressed in a dark sweater and black slacks, expensive but not flashy. His face was handsome but tired, like someone who had seen too much and spoken too little. His eyes were sharp blue, yet distant, as if they had forgotten how to hold light. She set her cup down. "I'm sorry, I didn't even tell you our names. I'm Emma Parker, and this is my daughter, Lily." Ethan nodded politely. "Ethan Westbridge." Her eyes widened slightly. "Westbridge? As in Westbridge Industries?" He gave a small shrug. "Yes." For a moment, silence filled the space again. The name was famous. Everyone in the city knew it. He was the kind of man people read about in business magazines, not the kind who opened his doors to strangers on Christmas Eve. Emma cleared her throat. "We were driving to my sister's place. She lives up near Ridgewood. But the storm got worse, and the car just stopped working." "Did you call for help?" She nodded. "I tried, but there's no signal near the woods. I thought I saw lights here, so we walked." He glanced toward the window. The snow had grown thicker, the wind harsher. "You shouldn't go back out tonight," he said firmly. "The roads are dangerous." She hesitated. "I don't want to impose." "You're not," Ethan replied simply. "You can stay here until morning. The guest rooms upstairs are warm." Her shoulders relaxed with relief. "Thank you. You have no idea what that means to us." Ethan nodded again quietly. But what he didn't say, what he couldn't say, was that they had no idea what their presence meant to him. Lily had wandered off toward the Christmas tree in the corner of the room. The branches were bare, dusty, without a single light or ornament. "Mommy, why doesn't the tree have any decorations?" Emma's eyes flickered to Ethan nervously. "Lily, come back here, honey." But Ethan answered before she could. His voice was calm, low. "Because I haven't had anyone to decorate it with." Lily turned toward him, her little face full of wonder. "You can decorate it with us," she said cheerfully. Emma's cheeks flushed. "Lily!" Ethan looked at the little girl for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Maybe tomorrow," he said. Lily grinned. "Promise?" He hesitated. It had been years since he'd promised anyone anything. But then he nodded. "Promise." The child beamed, satisfied, and went back to sipping her tea. Later that night, Ethan led them upstairs. The mansion was huge, but he had long stopped using most of it. Dust covered some of the corridors, and the air felt old, untouched. "This room should be comfortable," he said, opening the door to a cozy guest suite. The fireplace inside flickered softly, and a thick blanket lay neatly folded on the bed. Emma looked around, her eyes wide. "This is beautiful. Thank you again, Mr. Westbridge." "Ethan," he corrected gently. She smiled. "Ethan." For a brief second, something unfamiliar flickered between them. Warmth, maybe gratitude, maybe something deeper neither of them understood yet. As he turned to leave, Lily's voice stopped him. "Mr. Ethan?" He turned back. "Yes?" The little girl clutched her bear and asked innocently, "Aren't you been asleep too? Santa might come." Emma laughed softly. "Lily, Santa might have trouble finding this big house." Ethan chuckled, a quiet sound, but real. "Don't worry, if Santa gets lost, I'll show him the way." Lily giggled, her eyes shining. "Okay." Ethan nodded, then looked at Emma once more. "Good night, Emma." "Good night, Ethan." He walked back down the hall, his footsteps echoing faintly in the silence. But this time, it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt peaceful. For the first time in 5 years, the Westbridge mansion wasn't empty on Christmas Eve. And somewhere deep inside him, a place he thought had died long ago, something small and warm began to flicker again. Morning sunlight peeked through the tall windows, painting soft golden lines across the living room floor. The storm had finally calmed, leaving a world wrapped in white outside. Inside, the mansion was unusually still, but not cold. Something about the air felt softer, alive. Ethan walked downstairs in his gray sweater, his hair still damp from a quick shower. He wasn't expecting company this morning, he never did, but today there was the faint smell of something warm drifting from the kitchen. He frowned. Impossible. When he turned the corner, he froze. There, standing by the kitchen counter, was Emma, her hair slightly messy, wearing one of his oversized shirts, probably borrowed for comfort. She was making pancakes. Beside her stood Lily, standing on a chair, carefully stirring batter with a spoon almost as big as her arm. "Careful, honey," Emma said softly. "Don't spill it on the counter." Lily giggled. "But Mommy, it smells yummy." Ethan stood silently for a moment, watching them. Two strangers in his kitchen, laughing like they'd lived there forever. It was a sight he hadn't realized he'd missed. Emma turned, startled when she noticed him. "Oh, I'm sorry. I hope you don't mind. Lily was hungry and I didn't want to bother you." He shook his head, his voice low. "No, it's fine." He glanced at the stove. "You found everything?" She smiled faintly. "Your kitchen is so clean, I wasn't sure if anyone ever used it." He gave a half smile. "You're right. I usually don't." Lily waved a spatula excitedly. "Good morning, Mr. Ethan." Ethan's lips curved a little. "Good morning, Lily." She grinned. "Do you like pancakes?" "I haven't had them in years." Her eyes widened. "You're missing out." Emma chuckled. "She's right. Sit, please. You've done enough for us already. Let us return the favor." Ethan hesitated, but something about her gentle tone left him no room to argue. He sat down at the table. A few minutes later, Emma placed a plate before him, golden pancakes stacked neatly with syrup and butter melting slowly on top. The smell was sweet and warm, like the memory of a simpler life. He took a bite. It wasn't perfect, a little uneven, slightly too sweet, but it was the best thing he'd tasted in years. "This is good," he said quietly. Emma smiled, her eyes soft. "I'll take that as a compliment." Lily leaned across the table. "It's Mommy's special Christmas pancakes." "Christmas pancakes?" Ethan asked. Lily nodded seriously. "Yep, we make them every year, even when we don't have a tree or presents." Something in Ethan's chest tightened. He looked at Emma, but she just gave a small, sad smile. "Things haven't been easy," she said softly, "but we try to make Christmas feel special anyway." Ethan didn't know what to say. He just looked at them. The small girl with syrup on her chin, the mother smiling despite the tiredness in her eyes, and felt a warmth spreading inside him that he couldn't name. After breakfast, Lily wandered into the living room and stopped in front of the giant Christmas tree. "Mommy, can we decorate it now?" she asked. Emma turned quickly to Ethan. "Lily, we can't—" But Ethan interrupted, his voice calm. "Go ahead." Emma blinked. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "A promise is a promise." Lily clapped her hands and ran toward the big box in the corner, the one Ethan hadn't touched in years. She pulled out ornaments, strings of light, ribbons tangled from time. "Come on, Mommy, help me." Emma laughed softly and began untangling the lights. Ethan watched them both, leaning against the doorway, his arms crossed, the faintest smile tugging at his face. He remembered the last time this tree had been lit, 5 years ago, when Clara, his late wife, had filled the room with laughter, wearing a red sweater, humming carols. His throat tightened. But then Lily's laughter broke through his thoughts. "Mr. Ethan, come help us. You're tall. You can put the star." He hesitated. "I don't think—" Emma looked at him gently. "It's okay. She won't stop asking until you do."
Ethan sighed softly, but something about their laughter made it impossible to refuse. He walked over, took the small silver star from Lily's hands, and reached up to place it on the top of the tree. When the star finally sat straight, Lily stepped back, clapping her hands. "It's perfect!" Emma smiled, eyes bright. Now the lights. Together they plugged the string in. The moment the lights flickered on, the whole room seemed to change. Warm colors danced across the walls, and the tree shimmered like a memory reborn. Ethan stood still, staring at it. For the first time in 5 years, his house looked like a home. Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Do you like it?" He nodded slowly. "I do." "See, Mommy?" Lily said proudly. "Told you Christmas trees make people happy?" Emma laughed. "Yes, you did." Ethan looked between them, the little girl's innocent joy, the woman's gentle smile, and felt something in his chest that scared him. Hope. He hadn't felt it in a long, long time. That evening, as the snow fell softly outside, Ethan sat with them by the fireplace. Lily was coloring in a small notebook she carried everywhere, while Emma sipped tea quietly beside him. She looked around the room and said softly, "Your house is beautiful, Ethan, but it feels sad." He glanced at her. "It's been that way for a while." She hesitated. "You lost someone, didn't you?" He looked into the fire. "My wife. 5 years ago. Car accident." Emma's expression softened. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "She loved Christmas. I stopped celebrating after that." There was silence between them, a silence not of discomfort, but of understanding. After a moment, Emma spoke quietly. "You know, sometimes when life takes something, it leaves space for something new." Ethan looked at her, and their eyes met. For a second, the room felt warmer, not because of the fire, but because of something unspoken between them. Then, Lily's sleepy voice broke the silence. "Mommy, I'm tired." Emma smiled and picked her up. "Come on, sweetheart." Ethan stood. "I'll show you to your room." When they reached the stairs, Lily rested her head on Emma's shoulder, half asleep. She murmured softly, "I like it here, Mommy. It feels safe." Emma's eyes glistened as she looked at Ethan. "Good night." He nodded. "Good night." As they disappeared down the hall, Ethan stood by the glowing Christmas tree. For the first time in 5 long years, he didn't feel alone.
The storm outside had softened to a drizzle, but inside Ethan's mansion, the air felt heavier than ever. The fire had burned low, casting soft orange shadows across the living room. Emma sat curled up on the couch, a blanket around her shoulders. Her daughter, Lily, was asleep upstairs, tucked into a bed that probably cost more than Emma's entire apartment. Ethan sat across from her, silent. He was dressed in a black sweater now, no longer the crisp, guarded CEO the world saw on magazine covers. For the first time, he looked human, tired, haunted. Emma finally broke the silence. "You don't talk much, do you?" she said gently, her voice breaking the quiet hum of the fire. Ethan gave a faint smile. "I used to, before I realized words don't always fix things." She tilted her head. "And yet you keep so many of them locked inside." His gaze flicked toward the window, where snowflakes drifted lazily down. "Some memories are better left untouched." Emma's eyes softened. "But untouched memories never stop hurting, Ethan. They just wait." That struck something deep inside him. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since they met. The exhaustion in her eyes wasn't just physical. It was the kind that came from fighting life every single day and still choosing to smile for someone else. He leaned back, exhaling. "You're right. Every Christmas, I tell myself I'll forget, that maybe this year it won't matter that she's gone." "Your wife?" Ethan nodded slowly. 3 years ago. A car accident. She was coming home to surprise me with something. I never found out what it was. And I was in a meeting. I didn't even answer her call. Emma didn't move closer, didn't rush to comfort him. She just sat there, listening. That quiet presence was the first kindness he had felt in years. When he finally looked up, his eyes glistened with the reflection of the fire. "You know, this house used to be full of light, laughter. I used to hate being alone in it. But now, I can't stand anyone being here until you two showed up." Emma's throat tightened. She looked away quickly, blinking back tears. "You're not the only one haunted by the past." He looked at her, gently but intently. "Tell me." Her fingers twisted the edge of the blanket. "Lily's father left before she was even born. He said I was ruining his life, so I decided I wouldn't let him ruin hers. I've worked every job I could find just to keep a roof over us. Some nights, I'd tell her bedtime stories just to cover the sound of my crying." Ethan's jaw clenched. "He walked away from you?" She smiled sadly. "From both of us. But that's the thing about pain. It either breaks you or it makes you softer." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them was thick with unspoken things. Two broken hearts, meeting in the quiet hum of winter. The fire crackled. Ethan leaned forward, his voice almost a whisper. "I don't know why you came to my door that night, Emma, but maybe you were the Christmas miracle I didn't know I needed." Emma looked at him, her eyes shimmering with warmth and sadness. "Maybe we both were, Ethan." And in that moment, with the world outside buried in snow, two people who had lost everything found the faintest spark of something neither had dared to believe in. Hope. The next morning, sunlight poured softly through the tall windows, melting away the last traces of snow clinging to the glass. The house was unusually alive. The faint smell of pancakes drifted from the kitchen, mixed with the cheerful sound of Lily's laughter. Ethan paused at the doorway, watching. Emma stood by the stove, her hair tied up in a loose bun, wearing one of his oversized flannel shirts that reached past her knees. She was flipping pancakes while humming a tune. An ordinary sight, yet something about it made his chest ache in a way he hadn't felt in years. Lily spotted him first. "Mr. Ethan, I made a snowman outside. He's missing a nose, though." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then we'll have to fix that, won't we?" Emma turned at his voice. "Good morning," she said softly, and for a fleeting second their eyes held something unspoken, something fragile, almost forbidden. He cleared his throat. "Morning. I didn't realize you were such a good cook." She chuckled. "When you're a single mom, you learn fast. Pancakes are our Christmas morning ritual." Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her move, the way she laughed with Lily, the way she looked at the world like it was still worth loving, even after everything she'd been through. It stirred something inside him that scared him more than he wanted to admit. Later that day, when the snow began falling again, Ethan found himself doing something he never thought he'd do. He asked them to stay. "Emma, she helped Lily pack her small pink backpack. "You don't have to leave just yet." She froze. "Ethan, you've already done enough. We've taken too much of your time." "You haven't," he said quietly. "The roads are still icy. It's not safe to drive. Stay just a few more days." Emma looked uncertain. "Are you sure?" He nodded, forcing a small smile.
I insist." That evening, they shared dinner by the fire again. Lily told silly stories that made Ethan laugh, a sound that even surprised him. He hadn't laughed like that in years. And Emma, sitting across from him, couldn't take her eyes off the way his face softened when he smiled. But later, when the house fell silent and Lily was asleep, the distance between them returned. Ethan stood by the window, staring out into the snow, his reflection barely visible against the dark glass. Emma approached quietly. "You're thinking again," she said softly. He didn't turn around. "You ever get scared of being happy?" Emma frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" He exhaled slowly. "Because every time I start to feel it, it disappears, like I don't deserve it." She stepped closer. "Maybe it's not about deserving, Ethan. Maybe it's about allowing yourself to feel it again." He turned to her, eyes searching hers. "You make it sound easy." "It's not," she admitted. "But sometimes the hardest thing isn't surviving pain, it's learning to live after it." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, neither of them breathed. The warmth between them was growing, slow and tender, but it carried a kind of danger that Ethan wasn't ready for. He stepped back, putting an invisible wall between them. "I should get some rest," he said quietly. "Good night, Emma." She forced a small smile. "Good night, Ethan." As she walked away, Ethan's heart twisted. He wanted to stop her, to tell her that she'd brought light back into this house. But instead, he let the silence win, because the closer she came, the more he feared losing the fragile peace he'd built from the ashes of his grief. Upstairs, Emma lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She could feel the distance growing between them, not out of rejection, but out of fear, the kind of fear that only comes when hearts begin to care again. Outside, snow kept falling, quiet, endless, and forgiving, as if the world itself was whispering that love, even the gentlest kind, always finds a way. Christmas morning arrived quietly. The house, usually cold and still during the holidays, was filled with a soft warmth, the smell of cocoa, faint laughter, and the sound of small footsteps padding down the hallway. Ethan woke to the unfamiliar sound of joy. For years, Christmas had been a day he tried to sleep through, to forget the empty chair at his dinner table and the unopened gifts collecting dust in the attic. But today felt different. He followed the laughter to the living room and froze. Lily sat cross-legged on the carpet in front of the glowing Christmas tree, a tree that hadn't been lit in 3 years. Emma was kneeling beside her, smiling as she plugged in the lights. The tree shimmered in soft gold and silver, filling the room with a quiet magic that seemed to breathe life back into the house. Ethan's voice came out rough. "You decorated it?" Emma turned, a little sheepish. Lily insisted, "I hope you don't mind." He looked at the blinking lights, the handmade paper stars, the little heart-shaped ornaments drawn with crayons. "Mind?" he whispered. "No, I just forgot how beautiful it could look." Lily beamed. "We made a present for you." Ethan blinked. "For me?" She nodded eagerly and ran to the table, returning with a small, unevenly wrapped box, covered in stickers and way too much tape. She held it out with both hands. "You have to open it now." Ethan took it carefully, his heart unexpectedly pounding. "All right then," he said softly. Peeling back the paper, inside was a small wooden picture frame. The photo inside was printed on ordinary paper, a picture Emma had taken the night before of the 3 of them sitting by the fire, Lily between them, grinning with missing teeth. Across the bottom, in Lily's crooked handwriting, were the words, "Our first Christmas together." For a moment, Ethan couldn't speak. His throat tightened, his vision blurred.
He had expected polite thanks, maybe some holiday gesture out of courtesy. But this was something else. Emma watched quietly, her eyes soft but uncertain. "Lily thought you should have a family picture again," she said gently. Ethan's hands trembled as he set the frame down on the mantel. He turned to Lily and crouched beside her. "This is the best gift I've ever received." Lily threw her arms around his neck. "Then you're part of our Christmas now." He froze, the hug catching him completely off guard. But then his arms moved, slowly, hesitantly, until he was holding her, really holding her. A lump rose in his throat. Emma watched away, blinking back tears. When Lily went upstairs later to play with her toys, Emma stood beside Ethan by the fire. He was still staring at the photo, lost in thought. "She's something special," Emma said softly. "She's everything I forgot existed. Joy, light, innocence." Emma smiled faintly. "She's all heart, even after everything we've been through." He turned to her then, really looking at her. "You've done an incredible job, Emma." She shook her head lightly. "I've just been surviving." "Surviving doesn't raise a child like that," he said quietly. "Love does." The silence that followed was gentle, not heavy, not awkward, but warm. A quiet understanding passed between them, the kind that didn't need words. Ethan wanted to say more, wanted to tell her that she'd given him something he thought he'd lost forever. But before he could, Lily's laughter echoed from upstairs, and Emma smiled. In that moment, Ethan realized something terrifying and beautiful. Somewhere between the snow and the silence, he had begun to care again, for the little girl who sought Christmas as magic, and for the woman who brought it back into his life. But as he watched Emma carry the cocoa mugs to the kitchen, he also knew something else. Caring meant opening himself to loss again, and he wasn't sure his heart could survive that twice. He looked once more at the photo on the mantel, 3 faces glowing in firelight, and whispered under his breath, "Merry Christmas." The snow outside had started to melt, leaving glistening patches of ice that sparkled under the winter sun. Inside the mansion, everything looked the same. The glowing tree, the faint scent of cinnamon, the hum of quiet mornings, yet everything felt different. Emma noticed it first. Ethan had become more distant, more reserved. He still joined them for breakfast, still smiled when Lily ran into his arms, but something in his eyes had changed. There was a quiet storm there, something he wasn't ready to talk about. One afternoon, as Emma folded laundry in the guest room, she heard the low murmur of Ethan's voice from his office. His door was half open. "Yes, Jonathan, I've seen the proposal. I'll review it when I get back to the city." Emma froze. Get back to the city? She hadn't realized until that moment that she'd begun to think of this house as something more than temporary, that she'd allowed herself to believe in the warmth it offered. That evening at dinner, she finally asked, "Are you leaving soon?" Ethan looked up, startled. For a moment he didn't answer. Then, with a slow exhale, he said, "There's a merger meeting in New York after New Year's. It's important." Lily frowned. "But you'll come back, right?" He hesitated. "Of course," he said gently. "I just need to handle some business." Emma forced a smile, but inside her chest something sank. The next few days felt strange, too quiet, too careful. Ethan began spending longer hours in his office, though sometimes she'd catch him standing by the window, watching her and Lily play in the snow. His expression was unreadable, part longing, part restraint. One night, unable to sleep, Emma walked downstairs for a glass of water. She found Ethan in the living room, sitting by the fire again, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the table beside him. "You're still awake?" she asked softly. He looked up, his eyes tired but warm. "Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts." She walked closer. "About work?" "About everything," he admitted. "About how strange it feels to want something again." Emma sat down across from him, pulling the blanket tighter around her. "Strange can be good." He smiled faintly. "Not when you're used to losing it." Silence stretched between them, not awkward, just filled with things they were too afraid to say. "Emma," he said finally, his voice low, "when you and Lily came here, I thought it was just a quiet interruption to another lonely Christmas. But now—" He paused, shaking his head. "Now I find myself looking for you both, listening for her laughter, waiting for your footsteps in the kitchen, and it scares the hell out of me." Emma's heart pounded. "Why does it scare you?" "Because every time I start to care, life takes it away," he said softly. Her eyes glistened. "I understand that fear, Ethan. I've lived with it too. But not everything is meant to break you." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze locked on hers. "And what if I break you?" She didn't look away. "Then at least I'd know it was real." The air between them thickened, charged, tender, fragile. He could see the flicker of firelight in her eyes, the soft tremor of emotion she was trying to hide. For a moment, Ethan almost reached for her hand, but then he stopped, as if something inside him froze. He stood abruptly. "I should get some rest." Emma's breath hitched. "Of course," she said quietly. When he left the room, the emptiness returned, heavier than before. She looked at the photo on the mantel, the one Lily had made, and whispered to herself, "Don't fall, Emma. Not again." But she had already fallen. And upstairs, Ethan leaned against his bedroom door, his heart pounding painfully in his chest. He had built walls around his grief, around his life, and somehow, in the quiet of winter, Emma and her daughter had found the cracks. He closed his eyes, whispering to the empty room, "I can't lose them too."
The days after Christmas felt heavier. The laughter had faded, replaced by quiet footsteps and careful conversations. The snow outside had hardened into ice, cold, unmoving, like the silence that had begun to grow between Ethan and Emma. Emma could sense it every time Ethan walked into a room. The warmth that had once glimmered in his eyes was dimming again. He was retreating, not in anger, but in fear. Lily, blissfully unaware, continued to fill the mansion with her small joys. She drew pictures of snowmen and hearts, taped them to Ethan's study door, and sang Christmas songs long after the holiday had passed. But Emma knew what was coming. She could feel it. And one morning, as she stepped into the hallway, she saw the proof. Ethan, standing by the front door, suitcase beside him, phone pressed to his ear. Her heart dropped. He ended the call, then saw her. For a moment neither spoke. "You're leaving," she said, her voice quiet but steady. Ethan nodded slowly. "There's business in New York, the merger." "Don't," she cut him off softly. "Don't hide behind business." He closed his eyes. "Emma." She folded her arms, trying to keep her voice calm. "After everything, you're just walking away?" He took a step closer. "It's not that simple." "Then make it simple," she said, pain breaking through her composure. "Tell me why." He looked at her, at the woman who had brought light back into his home, and the words that left his mouth shattered him as he said them. "Because I can't do this again." Emma froze. "Do what?" "Feel," he whispered. "Care. Hope.
lose. Her eyes filled with tears. You think love always ends in loss, Ethan. But sometimes it begins in it. He shook his head. You and Lily deserve more than a man who's still haunted. I thought I could, but I can't risk it. I can't risk breaking you both. You're not breaking us, she said quietly. You're breaking yourself. Ethan's voice cracked. You don't understand, Emma. I lost my wife. I watched the light go out of my world once. I can't go through that again. Not with you. But you already are, Ethan. You're feeling it again, the ache, the fear, the hope. That's what being alive is. He turned away, jaw tight. Maybe I was better off numb. That sentence hung in the air like smoke, bitter and final. Emma stood there for a long moment, staring at him. Then she nodded, tears streaming down her face. Then maybe we shouldn't stay. Lily's small voice broke the silence from behind them. Mummy? Are we leaving? Emma turned, her heart cracking. Yes, sweetheart. Mr. Ethan has to work. Lily looked confused, then ran to Ethan and hugged his leg. Will you come back before the snow melts? Ethan's throat tightened. He crouched down, brushing her hair back. I don't know, Lily. Then I'll make another snowman for you, so you don't forget us. He managed a weak smile. I could never forget you. When the car pulled away later that afternoon, the mansion felt like it had exhaled, empty and cold again. Ethan stood by the window, watching the taillights disappear down the long, snow-covered drive. The silence that followed was deafening. He walked back to the living room, and his gaze fell on the photo still sitting on the mantel, the one that Lily had made. Our first Christmas together. For a long moment, Ethan just stared at it. Then he picked it up, his hands trembling, and whispered, I ruined it again. The house creaked. The fire burned low, and the walls that had once echoed with laughter were silent once more. Outside, the snow began to fall again, slow, steady, merciless. And for the first time in years, Ethan West felt truly, unbearably alone.
The weeks that followed were long, gray, and silent. The mansion that had once been filled with warmth and laughter now felt like a museum of memories, every room echoing with the ghost of what he had lost. The Christmas lights still hung by the staircase, but Ethan hadn't found the courage to take them down. He returned to his work in New York, meetings, deals, handshakes, all the things that once defined him. But something had changed. His office felt colder. The city lights outside his window looked dull. Even success had started to taste like ash. One night, as he sat in his office overlooking the skyline, Jonathan, his assistant and oldest friend, stepped in quietly. You've been staring at the same report for an hour, Jonathan said gently. Ethan rubbed his eyes. I'm fine. Jonathan sighed. No, you're not. I've seen you tired before, Ethan, but never empty. Ethan didn't reply. He just leaned back in his chair, staring at the photo frame on his desk, the one he had brought from home. The photo Lily had made, the three of them by the fire, our first Christmas together. Jonathan followed his gaze. You miss them. Ethan's jaw tightened. I shouldn't. It's better this way. Jonathan shook his head.
You can't keep pretending you're protecting them when all you're doing is running from yourself. Ethan turned sharply. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Jonathan said quietly. Your wife's death wasn't your fault, Ethan, but you've spent every day since punishing yourself for surviving it. The words hit like a hammer. Ethan's throat burned. He couldn't look away from the photo. She brought light back into your life, and you sent it away because you were scared. You've always been the man who could fix everything, every deal, every problem, except your own heart. Ethan's voice broke. I don't even know where they are. Jonathan smiled faintly. Then start by finding them. 2 days later, Ethan drove out of the city, heading toward the small town where Emma had once mentioned her apartment was. The snow had begun to melt along the roads, leaving behind muddy streaks and pools of cold water. Winter was ending, but the ache inside him remained. He found her address after hours of searching, a small, worn-down building with faded paint and crooked mailboxes. He hesitated before knocking on the door. His pulse hammered in his ears. When the door opened, Emma stood there, wrapped in a simple cardigan, her hair tied back, surprise flashing across her face. Ethan? I swallowed hard. Hi. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with everything left unsaid. Why are you here? She asked finally. Because I was wrong, he said, his voice trembling slightly. I thought pushing you away would protect you, but all it did was break me. Emma's eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. You don't get to come back just because you're lonely, Ethan. He nodded slowly. I know. That's not why I'm here. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the small photo Lily had made, now creased from being carried everywhere. This picture is the only thing that feels real anymore. Emma looked at it, her lips trembling. Ethan. I miss her laughter, he continued quietly. I miss your voice. I miss waking up and hearing life in that house again. And I know I don't deserve it, but I want to try, if you'll let me. For a long moment she didn't move. Then a small voice called from inside the apartment. Mommy, who's at the door? Lily peeked out from behind her mother, and when she saw Ethan, her whole face lit up. Mr. Ethan! She ran straight into his arms. Ethan knelt down, hugging her tightly, his eyes closing as he whispered, Hey, sunshine! Emma stood frozen, watching them, her heart pulling in two directions, one of fear, one of forgiveness. When Lily ran back inside, Emma finally said quietly, People like you don't just change overnight. I know, but I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to be the man you and Lily already believed I could be. Her eyes shimmered. And what if you can't? He met her gaze steadily. Then I'll spend every day trying until I can. The silence between them felt different now. Not empty, but fragile, hopeful. Emma didn't answer right away. She just stepped back slightly and whispered, Come in, Ethan. It's cold out there. As he stepped inside, warmth began to return, not just to the small apartment, but to something inside both of them. Outside, the snow continued to melt, drop by drop, as if the world itself was making space for spring.
Snow was falling again, soft, slow, and full of memories. Ethan stood by the tall window of his penthouse, watching the city below blur under the white. A year ago, this silence had been his only company. Tonight, it felt unbearable. He had built everything a man could dream of,
wealth, power, name, but nothing filled the hollow left behind by the sound of a little girl's laughter or the way Emma's eyes once softened his world. He had tried to move on. He even flew out to conferences, met investors, and kept himself busy with charity work. But every time he passed a bookstore, he thought of Emma. Every time he heard a child's giggle in the park, his heart ached for Lily. Then, one morning in early December, a letter arrived. It wasn't from her. It was from the town where she lived. Inside was a short note. "Mr. West, thank you for your help last year. Emma volunteers at the shelter now. Lily talks about you every Christmas. You should visit. Some stories deserve a better ending." Ethan read it over and over. For the first time in months, he smiled through tears. He booked a flight that night. The small town hadn't changed much. The little bookstore still stood by the corner cafe. The streets were strung with fairy lights, and children were building snowmen in front of the church. He parked his car near the shelter, clutching a small box in his pocket, a gift he had carried for months. Inside the shelter, he saw Emma. She was kneeling beside a young mother, helping her fold clothes, her hair tied loosely, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She hadn't seen him yet. For a moment, Ethan just stood there, frozen. How could she still look like home? Then Lily came running out from behind a Christmas tree, holding a paper star. "Mom, look! I made this one all by myself." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw him. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Ethan?" Emma turned, startled. The color drained from her face before soft warmth replaced it. "Ethan," she whispered. He took a slow step forward, his voice trembling. "Hi, Lily. You've grown taller." Lily ran to him and hugged his legs tightly. "You came back!" He knelt down, holding her close. "I promised I'd never forget you." When he looked up, Emma's eyes were shining, but guarded. "I didn't think I'd see you again," she said quietly. "I wasn't sure you'd want to," Ethan admitted. "But I needed to. There are things I never said, and things I never should have done." Emma sighed softly. "You don't owe me an apology, Ethan." "I do," he insisted. "I pushed you away because I was scared. Scared of losing something I hadn't even allowed myself to have. But the truth is, Emma, I lost you the moment I let fear decide for me." Silence filled the room, only the faint sound of carolers outside. Emma's eyes softened. "I was scared too," she said. "You gave us a home, then took it away. I didn't know how to tell Lily why you disappeared." Ethan swallowed hard, guilt tightening his throat. "I thought I was protecting you, from me, from my past. But all I did was hurt the only people who ever made me feel alive again." Lily tugged on his hand. "Mom still talks about you," she said innocently. "She said you helped us when nobody else did." Emma's face flushed. "Lily!" Ethan smiled faintly. "That means more to me than you'll ever know." He reached into his coat and pulled out the small box. "I brought this for you both," he said softly. "It's not much, but it's something I should have given you last Christmas." Inside was a simple silver key. Emma frowned slightly. "What is this?" Ethan took a deep breath. "It's the key to a small house by the lake near my company retreat. It's quiet, peaceful, full of sunlight. I bought it months ago, but I couldn't figure out why. Until now. I think I was waiting for a reason to call it home." Emma was stunned. "Ethan, I can't." He stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "I'm not asking you to take it. I'm asking you to let me earn a place in your lives again. Not as a savior, but as someone who finally understands what love really means." Her eyes filled with tears. "And what does it mean to you now?" He looked at her, eyes glistening. "It means showing up. Every day. Even when it's hard. It means building something together, not running when it starts to matter." For a long moment, Emma said nothing. Then she took a step closer. "You really have changed," she whispered. "Because you taught me how," he replied. Lily clapped her hands suddenly. "Can we go see the house, Mommy?" Emma laughed softly through her tears. "Maybe. Maybe we can." Ethan smiled, a deep, quiet relief washing through him. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt something he dared not feel: peace. A week later, the little house by the lake was warm with laughter. Lily was decorating cookies by the fire, while Emma and Ethan hung ornaments on the Christmas tree. At one point, Emma looked out the window, watching the reflection of snow on the lake. "You know," she said softly, "Lily said something last night. She said maybe Santa sent us back to us." Ethan smiled, wrapping his arm around her. Maybe he did, or maybe it was the other way around. Emma tilted her head. "What do you mean?" He looked at her, eyes tender. "Maybe it was you and Lily who saved me." Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, and the world glowed under 1,000 tiny lights. When the clock struck midnight, Lily placed the final star on top of the tree and said, "Merry Christmas, Mr. Ethan." He smiled, pulling both of them close. "No, sweetheart," he said softly. "Just Ethan, because family doesn't need titles." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder. "Merry Christmas," she whispered. And as the fire crackled and snow drifted gently outside, Ethan finally understood Christmas wasn't about what was lost. It was about what was found again. A home, a heart, and a promise that this time he wouldn't let go.